All right. God, gotta be the star of the show always. Just the best person at Spike Week. Nobody can hear me talking right now. All right, we are back for this 11th and 12th round of the Bulldog draft. We have the zero RB build going. We have a hero quarterback. We have an elite tight end. What are we going to do with these next two rounds? Well, why don't you take a bit, Rob, with your bad, stupid up. We are back for the 11th and 12th rounds of this $500 Bulldog draft. We have this zero running back build going. We have an elite QB. We have an elite tight end. Where are we going to go in this draft next? Nobody knows. So why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. What's up, everybody? We have the whole gang back together for this particular show. It's myself, Silas Jackson, Eric Beimfor, and Trev getting ready to do this Bulldog draft. And gentlemen, how are we liking our team so far?
I'm loving it. We have nice flexibility. We can kind of go anywhere we want, and you got the best team. So I don't know why I would complain.
Eric, we kind of overruled some of your RB pick last time by going with AJ Dillon. Were you upset by that? Did you think it was okay? Where do you stand on the AJ Dillon pick?
It's funny. I sent you guys a message behind the scenes after watching the videos Saturday morning, I think it was. And as Rob read on the show, I kind of listed my hierarchy of running backs and was Gibson over Dillon. I don't like strongly dislike Dillon, but that's like, I think that show was like an example of the power of the conversation of people, different minds coming together. Because like I said, I personally was a little bit more Gibson over Dillon and some of the other running backs there other than Damian Harris. And then you guys talked it through, and like, especially for this specific team and this specific tournament. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, I think they're right. I think we should take AJ Dillon, even though that wasn't my initial take. So I came around to your side of AJ Dillon, and maybe it was because we definitely got my guy Damian Harris, so I was willing to concede to some of your points. But I think the team, well, especially with those two, like those three running backs kicking off this team with everything we got, is beautiful. You can't get a much better start, I don't think.
So, why don't you give us some quick thoughts on the team? Are you still liking it? I know we've all kind of enjoyed the build so far. Do you think we've made any missteps, or kind of it's worked out the way we wanted to mostly?
No, I think when you look at a zero RB build, having three potential, upsides of RB1s as your anchors in the zero RB build is fantastic. You have an elite quarterback with QB1 upside. George Kittle has the highest single game ceiling, probably outside of Kelsey, maybe even higher than Kelsey at tight end. And then we have some really interesting wide receivers. So I freaking love this team. I think it's great for the structure in this tournament specifically, and I think it has significant, first place equity.
All right, why don't we scroll up a little bit and let's just read off our team before we start talking about this 11th round pick. So we started with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. We went Lamar Jackson in the third, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Zay Flowers. So through 7, we had 5 wide receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 tight end. And then in the 8th round, we started hitting running back. We went Cam Akers, Damian Harris, A.J. Dillon. And now we are on the clock at the end of the 11th round. So why don't we take this position by position and see if there's anything that kind of jumps out. And let's just start with quarterback, because I think this is going to be a quick conversation for us. When we're looking at the quarterbacks, we see Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Jared Love on the board. Jordan Love on the board. And a lot of these guys, their ADPs kind of extend into the next set of rounds that we would be drafting. So more so 13th, 14th round. Jared Goff's the only one that goes a little before where he's supposed to. He's usually around 128. We're doing the 131 pick right now. Does anyone want to pound the table for any quarterbacks, or we're all pretty content with moving on from this position, right?
Maybe if we were set up for, like, if we had Amon-Ra or Olave or something like that. I think this is a tier that is honestly really gross at like every position. So you can dip into the quarterbacks, but we're actually set up for a couple of late round quarterbacks, and so I think there's no reason to dive into an unstacked Jared Goff or Derek Carr or something here.
Right. Let's take a look at tight end real quick, because there's like a brief conversation that could be had. I know Trev wants to maybe pound the table for one of these tight ends, but we're looking at Chigga Conway, Dalton Schultz, Greg Dulcich, Cole Kmet in this range. I'm going to start with others. I'm going to start with Silas. Is there a tight end here that you're like, man, this really makes our roster significantly better than other positions?
I wouldn't go like it makes our roster significantly better. But I know Trev likes Chigakonkwe. I like Chigakonkwe. Like his yards per route run is through the charts. They kind of seem like they want to get the ball in his hands. The only downside is he plays for the Titans, and Mike Vrabel wants to pound the rock 35 to 40 times a game.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? Is there a tight end that like you're like, oh, I'm definitely going from 6 to midnight with this guy?
Oh, no, definitely not that. I do think, again, it's like with this specific spot in the draft is just so gross that I don't think we have to be tied to really anything. So I would listen on a tight end, if Trev or someone really wants to push Chig or Schultz or anybody else. And I think the wide receivers specifically are so bad in this range that you can kind of detour. Like for me, this is going to be the 11-12 turn. There's wide receivers in the 13, 14, 15, 16th round that don't really feel much different than the wide receivers here. So I do think that's important in terms of the conversation we might have with the tight ends, but I'm not like jumping over tables to draft any of these tight ends specifically.
All right, Trev, it is your time to shine. This is the moment you've been waiting for ever since the camera was installed in your apartment or house or wherever you live on the West Coast. Tell me why Chigga Conway makes sense for our team and why we have to draft him.
Well, they used Chig last year, how everyone thought they were going to use Treylon. Everyone's like, oh, they're manufactured touches, all this stuff. That's what they were doing with Chig. He was getting screens. He was getting handoffs. He was getting jet sweeps. Like, they like getting the ball in his hands. And who's his target competition? The number 2 tight end is Trayvon Wesco, who I don't know if he's caught a pass in his life. He's got Racy McMath at wide receiver.
Still not a real person.
They don't need to pass the ball that much. And when he was getting his playing time, he was playing with Malik Willis. I spent a whole 7 minutes to watch all 40 of his targets or whatever he had last night.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus Christ. And, what are you doing?
It was Malik Willis sailing passes over his head. And when Tannehill was actually playing, it was good. So I don't think it can get much worse than Malik Willis, honestly, even if Levis is playing, who I don't even like. But if Tannehill is playing 17 games, I think he's a smash, and it might not be a complete shit show, even if it is Levis.
All right, so we're gonna put Chig on the back burner because we're gonna have to probably have a discussion about him. Let's move to the wide receivers real quick. I just want to see what we're dealing with in this particular position and what we should be talking about here. So the wide receivers that we see that are available are Rondell Moore, Jonathan Mingo, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, Alec Pierce, and I'll throw Van Jefferson in there as well. Is anyone jumping off the page to any of you guys? I'm going to start this one. I've been pretty high on Jonathan Mingo in a lot of different builds this year. Unfortunately, before we went on the show, I saw 2 to 3 blurbs hyping him up coming up for the season, where he's going to probably, there's a heavy chance he's an every down player. They were comparing him to DJ Chark, who's never been like a high volume guy. And they think that obviously everyone thinks that Adam Thielen is going to be on the downside of things. So people are really starting to hype up Mingo, and I think he's going to start going a lot higher in drafts in the next few weeks. So if we were to talk about any of the guys that are here, for me, it would be Mingo and potentially Rice as well. But Rice, I would personally push to our 12th pick. Mingo is the one that I think we'd have to discuss before Braden drafts with his double dips because of his wide receiver situation. He's already grabbed Adam Thielen. He might be trying to set up some sort of double stack with Carolina. Other than that, is there any wide receivers jumping off the page for you? Trev, I'll come back to you. You just did your whole chick dance. So
I brought up Rondale Moore. He has the correlation, but
Mhm.
I like making the Cardinals bet with Trey McBride later. So I mean, if we did that, obviously, if we're grabbing Chig, which we may not do, unfortunately, we have Trey McBride in the 17-18 turn. But
Mhm.
they have Clayton Tune at quarterback. It's hard to see much upside there, and it seems like more of a floor play, even though he's has some nice like yards after catch abilities. You know, he's flying up the draft boards, and it could just be a terrible team. And you know, I'm not too excited by him. I think Mingo would also be my number one guy, just because he doesn't have a lot of competition and he's athletic. You know, we just don't know how the offense is going to be with Bryce Young. Rookie quarterbacks don't often just ball out
Right.
and let their wide receivers go to work.
Right. Silas, anyone jumping off the draft board here?
Rondell jumps off the board for me just because he might get peppered with 250 targets. He correlates for week 17 and week 15 with both our Niners and Eagles stacks. I definitely see the discourse on, the rookies of Rashi and Mingo. But how about an upside case in Nico Collins as well? He could finally be healthy. He's going to be used more down the field. CJ Stroud can actually throw the football, unlike Davis Mills. So he should be interesting. Obviously, there's a huge health concern, but could be a third year breakout for me.
All right, Eric. We know this is your favorite position. Is there a favorite among this position for you right here?
This is the brutal spot of the draft where I don't really like any of these guys. I think you can make a case for just about anybody. The rookie with a ton of opportunity, right? DJ Moore being gone from Carolina, bringing in Adam Thielen and DJ Chark, certainly not big target competition for Mingo, and the draft capital was pretty insane. He's a really good athlete. I don't tend to love the guys who get pushed up because of opportunity as rookies. I see the case, and I'm not going to have zero Jonathan Mingo, but I don't think anybody was like in love with him as a prospect. His production was not amazing at Ole Miss, despite not a lot of competition there either. I think he's fine. Like I said, I'll mix him into my portfolio, but he's not jumping off the page. Rondale, man, like on underdogs specifically, I agree with Silas that the targets could be there, but this is also a new offense. I don't think we should take what the Cardinals did, peppering the slot with targets or playing 3 and 4 wide all the time, into a more of a Kevin Stefanski style offense that they're going to run now. I mean, he may not even play. Like we just really don't know anything about the Cardinals. So again, I don't want to kind of pay the premium Rondale a ton. Nico is probably the guy that jumps off the page to me the most because he has proven it a little bit more at the NFL level. I think in the second half of last year, he actually proved to be a pretty decent player. You want to talk about no target competition, like Robert Woods, I hope John Mechie is okay for his sake, but I think Nico is kind of the safest wide receiver here. But again, you're paying a premium for what we perceive to be, volume on a maybe good off, maybe okay to bad offense. I just don't love taking the wide receivers here a ton. And I think our structure sets up probably for the running backs, which of course we will get into. The other thing I wanted to note just on Chig is our good friend Braden behind us at the turn has taken 2 tight ends already. So if we do want to take someone like Chig, I think we can take our preference of another position here in this first pick. I maybe he'll take Chig, but he doesn't feel like a Chig guy to me, especially with 2 tight ends. So just something else to note.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the meat of this conversation and let's look at the running backs. Silas, I'll start with you. What are we looking at here? Is this still a tier that we want to attack to add to the 0 RB build that we got going on? I think yes, but let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we're getting more into like primary backup position, whereas the last tier was guys that were going to have some workload. These guys might literally start out with getting 0 carries, but their roles could grow as the year goes on. Probably outside of Herbert and McKinnon. McKinnon has had health issues throughout his entire career. He's 31. There is definitely a chance that the Chiefs bring somebody else in. I know he was an absolute animal last year, but there's definitely some concerns for him this year. Herbert, it doesn't seem like the Bears like him for whatever reason because he is an efficiency darling. He was definitely better than David Montgomery. They kept giving him carries. Now they bring in Devonta Foreman, who's been good the last 2 years, and signed Roschon Johnson, who probably would have started at Texas if he wasn't behind the generational running back talent in Bijan Robinson. So there's definitely a lot of concern for him. I could see his workload starting out hot and kind of fading as the year goes on if he's not as efficient as he was in past years. And that could just be that he didn't have as many carries, and that's why he was as efficient as he was. I really like Tyler Algier here. We could probably wait for him. But Atlanta's going to run the football 40 times a game. And even if they sign Bijan, they're going to use him in probably more interesting roles. And if somehow he does get hurt and injured, like Tyler Algier is going to be another 1,000-yard, 10 touchdown season.
Eric, do you have any differentiating thoughts other than what Silas said?
Not a ton. I will say I think that this range for us and why I would steer away from Chig is and the wide receivers is I think this is still a really good pocket of running backs, kind of all the way down to Algier. I know some people like Singletary. I'm not really that into Devin Singletary. And my God, I didn't realize Jerome Ford had gotten up to 160 overall so fast. RIP.
He's going to rise even more too.
I know.
After yesterday's report, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, man, I missed those last round Jerome Ford date. I didn't even have enough time to make him this year's Darrington before he rose up. So
18th round Ford was fun, and 17th round Jalen Warren was fun while it lasted.
Those were fun. And Chuba's on the rise. Those were fun days. So I just wanted to point that out. I do just think this tiny little pocket here of running backs is still really, really good, especially for our build. Silas nailed it. That this is a much more uncertain group than what you guys just went through with the Damian Harris, AJ Dillon, Antonio Gibson. In general, we kind of know what we're getting with those guys. Like even AJ Dillon, gonna get his work right. Theoretically, a ton of contingent value if something happens to Aaron Jones. We kind of know what Antonio Gibson is. Blah blah blah. This group is there's 2 guys in particular I want to point out, and it is Khalil Herbert, like Silas mentioned. I have no idea Khalil Herbert could, like you said, maybe it's Foreman as the lead guy on early downs and Roschon as the third down guy, and Herbert's the guy that's left standing out in the cold. But all indications are that this guy's a good football player in all elements of the game. The Bears are an offense I actually really want to invest in this year, and the running backs are like the easiest way to do it, because we know that they're probably going to be good running the ball. They were good running the ball last year with a horrible offensive line and nobody to throw to and blah, blah, blah. He's the guy who I think if things break his way in the Bears backfield can be like a fantasy star. I love Devonta Foreman. He can be very good. Maybe Roschon can too, but I just think that Herbert has proven something that if he gets the majority of the work, even though we know it's going to probably be a committee, he can pull away from those other guys based on what he's shown at the NFL level. So he's probably my number 1, but it's very, very close. I actually really like Kendre Miller a ton. I think we obviously have the Alvin Kamara. Who knows what's going to happen? Assumed suspension, could be a lengthy suspension. Kamara's already regressed a ton, and they spent pretty hefty draft capital on Kendre. I was really into him as a player and a prospect as it is. And so let's just say Kamara gets suspended for 6-8 games, something like that. For most of the season now, if a 3rd round rookie, one of the highest drafted running backs in this year's class, competing with Jamal Williams for touches in the backfield, and Jamal Williams is fine. He scored a bunch of touchdowns last year, but he's not a guy that's going to take over a backfield. I think Kendre has all the opportunity in front of him to almost like from the jump be really good for fantasy. And like if he can play, he could just take over, and that's what we're looking for on a team like this. I don't hate McKinnon. I don't hate Algier and stuff, but Algier is a little bit more of a contingent bet to me. Obviously, he can be good with Bijan there, but I think he needs, to be a stone cold smash, he needs an injury. I think Herbert and Kendre are the guys who could both benefit from an injury, or they could just be good regardless. And so I think the tiebreaker for me goes a little bit to those guys. One little note, I was talking to Rob earlier offline, then I got some things I'm going to record here for videos to be put out this week. And I was doing some digging this weekend. And another reason why I'm on Kendre is I think the Saints could be like a little bit of a cheat code in fantasy this year. If you go look at their schedule and then you kind of marry that up to the prices of all of these guys, other than Chris Olave, every Saint is basically free. And including Kendre that we're talking about here, they play, like if you thought the Eagles schedule was easy last year, go look at the Saints schedule this year and tell me how many games that they like could struggle to score. So I'm just growing more interested in being heavy on the Saints. Kendre fits the young mold. I think those are the top two guys for me.
So those are actually my top two guys for a lot of the reasons you said. I'm not as worried about the Donta Foreman stuff as others. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I think he's just like kind of a security blanket for them in case shit goes south. I think that Khalil Herbert is going to be their preferred running back. They brought Roschon Johnson in to probably be like a two-headed monster. Donta Foreman's the insurance policy if that doesn't work out. And I think it gives them some time to build up Roschon Johnson as well and get him mixed into this backfield the way they want to, which if that's the case, and it's uncertain, of course, but that leaves Khalil Herbert to be the quote-unquote main guy. How much of a main guy is the question. So I'm Khalil Herbert here too. Notedly, I'm not an ADP guy. I don't usually care too much, but we are looking at getting him almost a full round past ADP here as well. So like that's when I think it starts to matter with ADP. When you're going an entire round, he should be usually going, beginning of the 11th, late 10th. We're going to get him right at the end of the 11th round here if we grab him. I think he's the one guy that has a real hard chance of coming back to us in the 12th. I personally am in on Khalil Herbert. Kendre Miller, I like a lot for all the reasons that Eric laid out. Who the hell knows what's going to go on there? I think that one's a little more murky than the Bears because I think that you could see that going for any of the three guys. I guess I'm kind of throwing Donta Foreman out a little, but I don't know. I think Herbert's the pick here personally. And then we see what's left for us at the 12 hole. And then we can have the Kendre Miller, Chig, Mingo, Rashee Rice conversation and see how we really want to build our team out from there personally.
Yeah, I'm Herbert too. I just think his worst case scenario is 8 to 12 touches maybe, and he'll have some big plays, get a couple spike weeks, even if he's not the lead back, which I would also assume that he is. My number 2 would be Bigsby over Miller, though. I think they're super close. It just this same coaching staff brought in Jamal Williams, so even if we don't think he's good, they made the decision to go and pay him. Right. But for Bigsby, it was a different coaching staff who drafted ETN, and he wasn't great in the passing game. He wasn't great at the goal line last year, so I think Bigsby has a chance to not just be a handcuff, but he could start to steal some of that work. Yep. I think it's a super similar bet. So I'm barely Bigsby over Miller, but I also think that the offense could be slightly better. So
that's a fair point.
Those three, but
Silas?
One more thing on the Bears. Khalil Herbert actually has the smallest dead cap of the three other running backs on the Bears roster. Travis Homer has a 1.75 dead cap. Believe Donta Foreman is $2 million against the cap, so they're most likely probably gonna have a roster spot, and there could be something underlying where they don't believe in Khalil Herbert, which is kind of like why they brought in so many other guys. It could be nothing, right? And he could just be the most talented back, which we all think he is. But reading the tea leaves, it just doesn't seem like they want him to be the guy.
Interesting. So where do you lean for this pick?
I would be either Kendre or Tank. I I take both of them quite a bit. I think that the Jags offense is really interesting. Kendra will probably have a role week 1 if Alvin Kamara gets suspended, but he's not going to have the goal line role. And I don't think he's going to even at the end of the year. So I think Tank actually has a bigger or a higher ceiling. So I'd probably be Tank.
I think
Interesting.
to the Homer point, I think he's more of a special. Like he was great on special teams for the Seahawks, so I think that's probably the main reason they signed him. And then they're also like he can catch passes, and we haven't seen. I mean, Foreman and Herbert are probably average. Same with Roshan. They don't have a great pass catching back, but I don't think he's really going to have a role where they're in love with him. But I guess we don't know, and Herbert could be cut.
Yeah, to me, this reeks of Homer's there to play special teams.
Yeah.
They carry 4 running backs on the roster because one of them is a special teams player that gets on the field 5% of the time here and there. Eric, who do you lean here?
This is very, very tough. I do think it would be fair to try to side with the 2 rookies. Away from like I hate doing this, and I hate to like keep bringing that up, but the whole premise of what we've brought up multiple times, mostly in terms of tiebreakers, is don't fuck this up.
Yeah,
type of a situation. And Kendre Miller and Tank Bigsby they have questions, right? Who knows what happens with Kamara? Who knows what the split would be between Kendre and Jamal? Who knows exactly, right? Is Tank going to get work? Is he just going to need an ETN injury? Who knows? But we know they're on the team, and frankly, we know they're going to play to some extent. What does that mean? Does that 10 snaps a game or 40? I don't know. But there is enough uncertainty, as I'm glad Silas brought up Travis Homer, because quite frankly, I had kind of forgotten about him. But I remember before the draft thinking about Travis Homer because they signed him, and I was like, why the fuck are they paying Travis Homer all this money? But I just think it's Khalil Herbert himself also came out and said, the quote was kind of funny. It was frustrated. He was frustrated, you could tell for sure, but he was being about as nice as he could while still voicing his frustration, saying like, he said something like, how it is nowadays. They're doing the whole committee thing, which kind of made it feel like, not that he was the odd man out. I still would bet on him to be kind of like get the first carry of the season, but that like, no matter what happens, right? That kind of like statement makes you feel like absolutely no matter what happens. Foreman goes down, Roshan goes down. It's like 60-40 Herbert and Travis Homer after that. It's like, I don't want to need 2 injuries or 3 injuries, or I don't like how many outs does Herbert have to being a worker? We know the efficiency is going to be there. That's why we're all excited about him. I'm excited about the Bears, his talent, his efficiency, but like, I don't want my upside case being like 13 carries. Right. Like I don't, even if he's averaging 5 yards a carry, that's not a lot of fantasy points if he doesn't score a touchdown. I want to be within the range of outcomes that this dude, like next year, we're talking about this dude in the 2nd round. And like, does Khalil Herbert have that? I don't know. And he has this, like, how much risk is it? I don't know, but it's more risk than Tank has. It's more risk than Kendre has. So like, I almost feel like if they have the same upside, give or take, and the other 2 are these rookies also in reasonable enough offenses, maybe we side with kind of just, let's take the safety of these, fairly high draft capital rookies in good situations as well, and not worry about the whole Bears thing. If we get later and like Foreman's there or Roshan's there, we can have that conversation again at a cheaper cost when there's less opportunity cost. But I do feel like, as we've talked it through, I'm leaning a little more towards those 2 rookies.
Well, I guess the question would be, when we build a base of Akers, Harris, Dillon, like guys that we know are going to get work, barring injury, as we can say, these guys are going to get work. They are going to be probably the lead backs on their team. I think Harris is going to be the lead back on the Bills for the most part. I think it might be a 50-50 thing there with Cook or whatever. Or Dillon is obviously got Aaron Jones in front of them. So even if they're not the lead back, it's going to be close. It's going to be like more of a split where we know we're getting production from them. Does it make more sense to take a guy with huge upside like Kendre Miller or Tank Bigsby? kind of get sold on Tank Bigsby a little more, just thinking about Kendre Miller and the aspect of underdog scoring, because as it was pointed out, he's not going to get the goal line work at all. Like, that is just not something he's going to do. I think in order for that to happen, Williams and then even Kamara would have to go down when he comes back, if he's allowed to come back based on his suspension. So Bigsby seems like he might actually have the better situation. I think that's a good call on Bigsby by Silas and Trev. So that's where I would lean.
The only counter I would say to that is I do agree in terms of if we're projecting right now goal line touches, but like Kendre's not an architect. Like Kendre isn't. I'm trying to think of like this isn't Deuce Vaughn. He's 220 pounds. He is a goal line runner himself. He just happens to also have another goal. A guy who scored 1 million touchdowns at the goal line last year. But like if we were looking 2 years ago and Jamal Williams was on his team, we wouldn't be saying, "Oh my God, he's never going to get a goal line carry ever." It's just last year what happened with Jamal, because Jamal was playing next to Swift, who is allergic to goal line carries. I think it's a little bit of a different situation than it feels with Jamal, but I would definitely bet Tank to, all things equal, get more goal line touches.
It's not just Jamal though. You got some Taysom Hill worry there as well,
for
right?
Sure.
You got that offense is a little spicy in that regard.
For sure. But Kendre has a cleaner path to like getting most of the work. Maybe he doesn't get the goal line or something like that, but like Tank definitely needs an ETN injury to like, be the dominant guy in the backfield. Kendre could be that in week 1, whereas Jamal is a role player, man. Jamal is not like going to take over this backfield. If Kamara's not there, like Jamal could be the 30% guy. Yes, he would steal goal line carries, but Kendre could be the lead back on a decent offense in the 11th, 12th round that we're getting here. Tank doesn't have that without an ETN injury. So it's kind of like the goal line thing.
How worried are we about that down throttling though? Like let's just give Kamara an 8-game suspension. How worried are we when Kamara comes back? What happens to Kendre Miller is my question. Because I don't think Jamal's role changes one bit when Kamara comes back, but Kendre could be screwed almost.
Depends how he plays.
Undeniable. Depends how he plays. Exactly. He has to be basically undeniable. And even then, the Kamara contract is going to be tough to trade. There is like an out in the contract, but it's for a lot of money. I just don't know what they're going to do there. I think in order for Miller to keep the job, but I like Kendre Miller. I don't know why I'm arguing against him. It's just, I do think there is a higher level of concern when we start putting more eggs in the basket is, I guess, the concern. Where Chicago, I kind of took one of the eggs out of the basket on purpose, but maybe that's wrong on my side too for taking Foreman out of that mix.
Only I'm not trying to totally elongate this conversation, but we've never mentioned Jerick McKinnon, and should we? Should we throw him into the ring?
Not here.
Did you beat the dead leg allegations, or
apparently?
I mean, they stopped using him during the play. He went on that run, and then they're just like, okay, we're done with you now. We'll go with Pacheco, who's.
I think that was an anomaly. I think that was I think that run he had was like just a gigantic anomaly, and I don't think you're going to see that again this year. Personally, I think he's.
You mean he's not going to score 2 or 3 touchdowns every week for like a month? That was the most insane shit I think I've ever seen in my entire life.
Can't keep getting away with this.
It was great. I mean, he was on all my best teams. He was on everybody's best teams when you get the 17th round guy that's dropping 30 for a month. But yeah, he went from that little stretch there, 6 to 10 carries with 9 or 8 targets every single week, which is still really not that much. 15 touches or 15 opportunities, and he was dropping 30 fantasy points, and then it kind of just all completely went away, as Trev said. Even in the playoff run, right? 11 carries, 0 targets, 4 carries, 4 targets, 4 carries, 3 targets. So he basically just had like 3 games of dominance, and then he was useless for the rest of the season. CEH is back. I don't know if that will matter at all. This Deneric Prince hype is maybe silly, but who knows? They did this to Pacheco, and look what happened. I think as the summer has gone on, I drafted McKinnon at the beginning, but I did want to bring him up to see if you guys had a differing opinion, because I'm probably just going to start full fading him here at this price. It feels silly to me now.
Yeah, I'm already full fading him personally.
Yeah. I think for the way our build is kind of set up, like McKinnon's kind of an early season player. He's getting older, hasn't been a full slate of health, and I hate to bring up that health argument, but like there's enough of a concern that he kind of gets eased out as the year goes on. Like we want someone to truly break out in the second half because we're getting weekly points from Akers, Harris, Dillon that are going to keep us afloat and help us to advance to the playoff meets. We want to find that breakout guy, so we're going for upside.
He's 31. He's 31 years old now. That's crazy, man.
I just want to point out this New Orleans playoff schedule. They're at home in the Dome against the Giants. Then they're on the road to play the Rams, and then they're at Tampa. That's to your point, Eric. That's a pretty sweet 15, 16, 17 week, for playoffs. I guess
Herbert's playoffs are. Whew, those last 2 games are pretty nice too.
Herbert's nice too. Yep.
Yeah, those ones are pretty good.
Frankly, all three of these guys, the playoffs are fine. So I did just want to, just while I'm thinking about this, because I did just want to bring up the Saints full schedule thing. I don't want to do like
you want to give us 1 to 17.
I'll fucking read it right now. We'll do the alphabet. we'll play the alphabet game. I'll go. But so they play their shitty division, right?
Yeah.
Their division is horrible. There's no good teams in there. They play the AFC South, which is, for anyone that doesn't know, Houston, not good. Jacksonville is the best team in that division, and that's not exactly a team you're running away from, right? You're not scared of them because they have the 85 Bears defense. They're just a pretty good team in a bad division. Titans, we just talked about how big of a disaster they are. And then someone's calling me, of course, during this. And then the Colts, who are like kind of in the middle of a rebuild, and you're certainly not scared of them. All good weather places, no matter what time of the season. So there's 2 divisions that they play great. They get like basically all the worst teams in all the other divisions because they sucked last year, right? So like you said, they play those Rams, they play the Lions, they play the Falcons, they play the Vikings, they play the Bears. They play the best team they play is that Jaguars team, I think. The Patriots, the Packers. Like, dude, any of these teams scary? Like, they have the softest schedule in the entire NFL, and I just so happen to be going through some strength of schedule stuff for the site recently and stumbled across it. I just think the Saints, it's like a tiebreaker type of a situation, and quite frankly, as we've talked through this, I think I want both Tank and Kendre, so whatever we would want to do to get those guys, with Herbert as a fallback. But I do just think the Saints in general are growing on me, and I already liked Kendre, so just trying to throw another little nugget out there about that.
Can I ask you a question? So based on that really soft schedule and them spending a crap ton of money on Derek Carr, don't you see them kind of passing way more than we expect them to?
It's definitely fair, which wouldn't hurt Kendre necessarily because he can catch passes. He's not a big time pass catcher. TCU, ran a very weird offense in that they didn't really throw to running backs at all. They're Max Duggan chucking the ball down the field and some yak stuff with QJ and all that. But if they're going to throw the ball more and be more efficient and score more points, like that's just good. Everybody eats, man. Like if you just score a bunch of points, everybody eats. Like I'm not trying to compare them to the Eagles last year, but that's like, dude, Miles Sanders wasn't good and he didn't catch passes last year. But when you score a bunch of points and your offense is good, Miles Sanders eats, right? And Dallas Goedert eats.
He did have the goal line role, though, which we know Jamal Williams is going to have.
That is true, but Jalen Hurts really had the goal. Jalen Hurts, Derek Carr isn't going to steal what Jalen Hurts stole. Again, I'm not saying the Saints are going to do what the Eagles did. But if we're betting on the Saints to be good in this little thought experiment, like, yeah, Jamal's going to get some of his. But I think we sometimes, not you guys, I do this too. We say like, oh my gosh, Jamal's the goal line back. Kendre's never going to get a touchdown. Right? It's not going to happen ever. DeAndre Swift scored a bunch of touchdowns last year and over the course of the last couple of years. And that's even when Jamal was scoring 1 billion of them. So are you going to get frustrated at some point? It's going to be week 3. Carr's going to throw a bomb to Olave. Olave is going to get PI in the end zone and Jamal is going to come in and score that touchdown. But like just with the Eagles, Hurts steals that from Miles Sanders sometimes. And Miles smashes. If the offense scores a bunch, I'm happy to play touchdown roulette. But it's the flip side of the coin where you're like, if they're not scoring, right? Khalil Herbert has this concern. How many touchdowns really are the Bears going to score? And you have Fields, and you have a committee. Herbert's not some big goal line bruiser. Foreman is. Roschon is. So I think it is a bit more than a fair question. But I'm one of those guys where, like, I try not to worry too much about the touchdown thing unless it's like Deuce Vaughn, unless you're like 170 pounds or something. I like to just kind of let the chips fall where they may when you kind of, at least you fit a certain profile. And Tank does too, frankly. Tank does too. So I like both of them.
I have to go back and say for Herbert that for some reason, I don't understand it. NFL teams do love David Montgomery. He got a nice second contract, and like he was obviously the lead back on the Bears. So Herbert, even though he was more efficient and everything, I don't think his competition is that great. I think Kendre has definitely more competition. And yeah, I just think
if Kamara gets suspended 4 games, Kendre's in a really rough spot, right? Like, I think so anyways. I think if because Kamara, it's taking longer and longer, I'm starting to think the suspension is going to be less. I know people are like projecting potential year, 8 games. Dude, I think you might see Kamara only get 4 games. The Saints don't have an out on his contract till next year. They're just going to run him into the ground, eat the money next year, and then be done with Kamara. Personally, that's my concerns with Kendre Miller, is he just doesn't get the opportunity. I think Khalil Herbert is going to get the opportunity, but there's so many different paths for these guys to get it or not get it, that I think what we have to do is look at our backfield right now. We have Akers, Harris, Dillon. Again, all guys that are going to contribute. Who has the most upside out of Herbert, Miller, and Bigsby? Who has the best ceiling is my question.
Hank, they used Etienne as a 3-down back. He gets hurt. They just drafted him. He could theoretically be a 3-down back. I don't see that for either of the other two.
So, sorry, Trev.
I think it's between. Almost upside. I think they're all super close. I mean,
Give me one. Give me
God.
your highest upside guy.
I'll say Bigsby. I'll say Bigsby as well, just because the best offense. If we're saying any of these guys could potentially be 3-down backs, Bigsby's on the best offense. Lawrence passes to the running back. I'll go with Bigsby.
Eric.
I've come pure upside. I think I agree on Tank. Like you guys said, I think cleanest path to a workhorse, and he's on a good offense. All that's missing is something happening to ETN for him. The other two have paths to really good roles, but it's murkier, and B, they probably need multiple things to happen as opposed to just one for Tank. And we know, I mean, they're also coming out and saying like they've had tons of quotes like, we don't want to give ETN that many touches. Tank is going to get work. So he is kind of that perfect blend of certainty in some kind of a role. And then I agree with you guys. Like, it's a really clean path, right? It's a typical contingent value bet. Something happens to ETN, which, spoiler, has happened many times over the course of his young career and in college. I think pure upside, it's definitely Tank.
Okay. I disagree. I think it's Herbert, but I yield because I think it's so close. I think we're, everything's paper thin with these discussions on who it could be. Here's the question we have to ask because we need to make this pick.
Let's make the pick, and then we can chat while Braden hopefully makes his
right. Here's what we have to ask first, though, real quick. Do we want to go with 2 of these? Do we want to try to get 2 of these running backs? Does anything else jump off the page, or do we think that getting 2 of these running backs is what we want to do here?
I think getting 2 is probably the right call.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that Braden's gonna pass up on Herbert if we do like him as our second guy. He's at the top of the board.
That's where I was going with this.
He might. Jerick McKinnon is 31. Braden probably loves that, but I think just looking at, he could easily take Herbert if we think he's our number 2, or if we want to go with Kendre, then I guess it doesn't matter too much, and we can grab Bigsby before him. I'm still Herbert as my like top option, I'd say, but I like him.
Because I think if we want to grab two of the three, Bigsby is the one that we can push, even if he is our top light guy. So if we like Herbert, to Trev's point, it's got to be Herbert first, and then it's got to be the second guy. If we want Kendre and Tank, I think we have to take Kendre first, because I think it's more likely that Tank is still going to come back. I think it probably doesn't matter as much in that scenario, but I do not think Herbert's coming back on this turn. So if we're going to pick two of these running backs, let's pick them. I think it's Herbert personally, and then I'm fine with Tank. But I can hear the arguments. I've heard the arguments for Miller. So let's make that discussion. Do we want to take Khalil Herbert right now? As long as everyone agrees with me. Do we want to take Herbert or Miller right now?
Part of me thinks we should probably grab a wide receiver. Grab an upside wide receiver with our second pick, which is why I quickly looked over at wide receiver to see, because he built with his Madison, JT, and Chubb. So he's definitely a high T guy. You know, his wide receivers are very underwhelming. I was trying to see if there was a wide receiver that would make entire sense. Of course, it happened to be Adam Thielen in this ADP range, who we took at the beginning of the 8th round, crazily. So I don't know if he's necessarily going to grab another wide receiver. So I do agree he's probably grabbing a running back. I think there are good upside bets at wide receiver here, and that can kind of help us to probably only take 7, in which we can then just start hammering, running backs further down the board. I don't necessarily think we need to grab 2 more running backs specifically in this range, because there are so many holes to poke. They do have, significant upside cases, but so are some of the later running backs.
Can you scroll down at wide receiver just to kind of see who will be here at our next turn?
See, this is where I lean away from wide receiver strictly because of what Trev just said. When you scroll a smidge, you get to Jaden Reed, Tyquan, Marvin Mims, Rashid Shaheed on my Saints, my newfound Saints love. Curtis Samuel, if we want to build out more of this Washington stuff, right? There's just a lot of guys, whether we like MVS or not, but I would rather play the MVS way of the Chiefs than McKinnon here, as an example. And so when
or Rashee Rice, who I like better than MVS, but for this particular team, I'm fine with anyone from Chark down to basically Hyatt or Samuel at that point.
Yep. Yeah.
So
and so
I
those
think
guys
we
look
can double
the
tap
same,
wide receiver
right?
Next.
Right. Mingo and Nico, whatever, those guys might be a little bit better. I'm not arguing that at all. And I do like Alec Pierce, but are those guys really different than Jaden Reed or Tyquan or Marvin Mims or whatever? Maybe in terms of week 1, I know Nico's out there running routes, but Jaden Reed's probably going to be out there too. But those guys don't feel much different to me. Whereas I do like Algier, so that's something to keep in our back pocket. But from a running back perspective, I do think they'll be like Chuba later, I guess. But we just talked Jerome Ford's going 160. Going 160 overall. All the good kind of contingent bets have really gotten juiced up. So I do like this range of running back a little bit more. But again, this whole tier is tough. You talk about poking holes in the running backs. We can poke holes in everybody in this whole next 40 picks. So I could go really anyway. I think I just prefer the running backs a little bit more.
We're going to be looking at a 2. Jesus Christ, we got I think we have a 2-6-8-2 build going here,
and it can be 7. It could be 2-7-7 also by the time we get later. Yeah,
but I think if we go with the 2 running backs, that really is going to help us go with a 2-6-8-2. Is my point, because at that point we have Akers, Harris, Dillon, 2 of the 3 of Herbert, Miller, Bigsby. So I think we only really have to add 1 more. And again, flexibility, we can go 2-7-7-2 if we
the flexibility is nice, because if we push running back too much further, we are going to be pretty like we already just talked about the weakness of these three running backs that we're considering.
Yep.
Right here, we push it even more to our 4th, 5th, 6th running backs, then we probably lock ourselves into needing that 7th guy just to have the extra lottery ticket. Whereas double tapping here, that's that 18th round pick or whatever our last, setup pick is, we can kind of like correlate it, or just the position may not matter at all. We can just like, oh, I need a fucking dolphin or whatever on this team. Like, let's just take it gives us that flexibility, which is nice.
And I think grabbing 2 running backs here also really helps the upside of getting an RB in the flex spot on multiple weeks. So I think, and only having to rely on 3 of our stud wide receivers here and there. So I think it's 2 RBs. If anyone, I know Silas is looking at wide receivers, but I think we take our 2 RBs here.
No, I think
So
you
then
guys,
who are we?
the tier is very similar.
Yeah.
Plus, one other thing that I've been thinking about is when the tier is so similar for the wide receivers, I do like to push it a little bit, because then I can just keep we're set up for Howell or Purdy as a QB2, like really fucking set up beautifully. But like, if something happens and we don't get either of those guys, having wide receivers in your back pocket, right? Keeping a wide receiver spot open is like, okay, nobody wants to, like, I don't want to do it either. I don't want to backdoor stack Mac Jones and Devontae Parker. I don't want to backdoor stack Tannehill and Kyle Phillips, but like, at least you have it in your bag. If something bad, those are the ultimate oh shit stacks, right? Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
we just got sniped on everybody, but you have, it's possible we have it in our bag.
Okay. It sounds like we're all in agreement on double running back here. Who do we want, guys? That's
Does
what I need to know.
anyone out of the 3 guys, does anyone have Herbert as their like 3rd option where they think
Silas does.
Silas
I
does?
think I
Alright.
do. I think I side with the 2 rookies. Yeah. But again, I'm not like, this is not a Damian Harris pound the table moment or a Rob AJ Dillon pound the table moment. That's why it's hard. I think I prefer the other 2, but honestly, I do think we're in a good spot, because if any 2 out of these 3, and I'll be happy.
Gotcha. Because I'm Herbert 1.
I'm Herbert 1 as well.
God, fuck. We're literally 2 of us are polar opposites.
I think there's just so much against Herbert, and the way that he contributes to this team is early. And really, we want to swing for a little bit more upside and get somebody who's probably going to be lower owned to help us advance, when we actually need him, actually win some damn money.
I think I said the same thing about Trey
that's-
Sermon.
That's my problem with Kendre Miller, though. Like, that's why Kendre Miller is the 3rd on the list for me now. Because I think he's most likely to have to take a backseat middle to late season.
See, but if he's decent, at least early in the year, right? He's a rookie. So like, he could lose his role, but grow into it because he's a rookie and they invested into him. Whereas if Herbert starts to lose work, he ain't getting it back.
Oh, well, yes. Once Herbert loses the work, he's done. But if Kendre Miller's not lights out, and he has to be lights out, he's losing a lot of his role once Kamara comes back.
I think they both
Saints
do,
are
though.
going to operate.
I think they both need to, because Khalil Herbert has 3 other dudes, 2 in particular, who are, it's not Alvin Kamara, but also Alvin Kamara is not Alvin Kamara. This isn't 23-year-old Alvin Kamara anymore. He's definitely going to do, he's definitely going to take something, but like the same thing can be said for if Khalil Herbert isn't dominant, right? If Khalil Herbert for 3 weeks runs for 3 yards a carry, like, guess what, dude? They got 2 other guys, maybe 3 other guys that can come in and outperform that, and are probably, Roshan's better in the pass game. This regime drafted him, right? It kind of, both of those things go to each player. That's why it's tough.
But I think the same thing is, you could say they invested, like, what was Kendre, a 3rd or 4th round pick?
3rd, yeah.
But yeah, Williams and Kamara have a total of like 18 million, or maybe not that much, but they have a lot of money invested in them for this season as well. And even if Kamara has a 8-game suspension, that also means he's going to have fresh legs. There's no chance for a big injury in those weeks where he's not playing. I think he's more likely to be there during the playoffs, even if he is getting older and not as efficient. It's hard for me to see like the situation where Kendre needs like 2 injuries to be a bell cow. There's a chance we've never seen Khalil Herbert and these 2 running backs on the same team. There's a chance he's just not a bell cow, but he could easily be the lead back from day one and just keep that role through the whole season.
So I'm just gonna give my rank. I'm Herbert 1, Bigsby 2, Miller 3.
I'm the same.
Yeah, I'm
Eric?
Bigsby 1, Kendrick 2, Khalil 3. But
I'm
like
the
it's,
same as-
it's tight.
I'm the same as
Jesus
Silas.
Christ.
So like personally, I would rather just grab Tank and then hopefully Brady
See what happens.
takes one of the guys that we ideally would want.
Yeah, because you know he's going to take Herbert on this turn here. That's
See,
why
I
you
don't.
I
wanna do
really
that.
don't though.
I don't know that he's gonna take Herbert. I think there's a lot of negative sentiment towards Herbert. I know he's an ADP value, but there's a reason why he's an ADP value here is because he continues to fall. He like right. We're in the time of the year when the news stuff is all mostly fluff, but people react to it very strongly. I mean, Sky Moore's already starting to rise again because he had like one good day, right, at camp or whatever. And there's a good quote. Khalil Herbert himself came out and said, yeah, whatever, man. This is going to be a committee. It is what it is. That's what everybody's doing now. And people are like, oh, shit. We've been taking this guy at 115 overall and taking all the other guys at 160. So he's starting to fall. And this guy does have 3 elite running backs. Is he, can he take the 4th? Of course. But like his wide receiver, like 3 is Adam Thielen or something. So he's also very, very likely to take a wide receiver. He could take a quarterback too. He only has 1 quarterback as well. All
right. Let's take Tank Bigsby since he is our consensus too.
He's the 1.5 on our big board. We either have him 2 or 1.
God, I want to make a side bet about this Khalil Herbert thing so bad. But let's draft Bigsby.
Let's book it. I'm down to book it.
I also think doesn't it make the most sense though? We all generally agree on Tank. We don't agree at all really on Herbert and Kendre. So then let's just see which one of them falls back to us at that point and get the guy we like. We all also disagree how likely it is that Herbert falls to us. So there's not really a good way with 4 people. We would need a 5th person to tie break these Herbert versus Kendre things. So I do think this makes the most sense.
I don't.
I hope he takes both.
I don't.
Just to really fuck this whole video. To really.
Well, that's what I want because I'm throwing my headphones and I'm walking away. If that's what happens, I'm out of here. I'm gonna be so pissed off.
He took Thielen at the 801. I think he's eyeing McKinnon for sure.
He definitely. See, that's what I think. He would take McKinnon over Herbert.
I was trying to see which old wide receiver was out there, and like I can't really find one.
I think you got to scroll.
Chark.
Yeah, but
guaranteed volume. If he reaches
old,
well, he feels.
He's
old.
not even 27. All right, he's a Goff.
Okay.
Does he have a lion?
No, probably not. I don't think he does.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
No.
I mean, he doesn't have a bear either.
What about tigers? Jared Goff.
Galen Hyatt. See, he doesn't take either of them. So we're having the same discussion, maybe.
Oh, fuck.
Okay. Awkward.
All right, so Chig Okonkwo.
Yards per route run is a quarterbacking stat, and he had terrible quarterback play, so he's actually better than his yards per route run.
I would really obviously prefer, Trev said it earlier, to be a little serious about the Chig thing. I think Trey McBride or I also don't think we have to force the week 17 correlation. It's a very small week 17 final. It's a good tiebreaker for the Eagles, but I would rather one of the late round tight ends. But if we are literally undecided on all these guys, we like Algier and some of the Chuba, etc. a little bit later at running back. We could just say, I mean, I don't really have anything against Chig. I think he could be awesome. We don't like the wide receivers. He's as much of a flex play really as a wide receiver is. I don't think it's terrible to at least consider it. I just would prefer Kendre or Herbert.
I'm definitely more of I like running back here just because we're set up for a late round tight end. We invested in Kittle. And in those 16th, 17th, 18th rounds, the tight ends are so much more secure than the running back. So I think it's probably smart to take Herbert or Miller here, and Rob might leave if we take Chig. So I think we lean towards the running backs. We just need to figure out, which one.
Yeah,
I
the only thing for
think it's
Jake that
Herbert.
I have is it's like he kind of wins the same way that Kittle does. So you're just kind of hoping they piggyback rather than have them in the same weeks. And chances are they're probably going to line up in the same weeks. We're only going to be able to get off of it. Doesn't really add a lot of points to our team.
Okay. I don't think we need to add much analysis to this pick. We just need to figure out who it is.
Yeah. So how do we decide?
I think it's Herbert.
Same
I
here,
know
that's crazy.
Trev thinks it's Herbert. You both think it's Miller, right?
I'm fine going Herbert because you let us take Tank.
Yeah.
And booking that side bet on the side so that we can hash it out for the year.
I also think we can get Rashid Shaheed as our Saint on the next set of rounds if we wanted to. Like I think if we don't get Herbert, that's our. I don't think there's any other Bears to get. I mean, I guess Donta Foreman. If you got, I personally am very out on Donta Foreman. I would be in on Rashawn Johnson, but he's going to be gone. I think by the time we get back to our picks. So I'm
Possible.
Herbert here.
It's possible he's there. If Herbert's falling and if the Bears running backs in general are falling, but I'm willing to concede on Khalil Herbert because I prefer Kendre, but I don't think we're splitting hairs ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, the big thing for me was that I think we should take 2 out of those 3 guys. Whether we all prefer which one we all prefer, I don't think is that really that big of a deal. So I think it's totally fair. As Silas said, we took Tank at the first one, which I think made the most sense, and I'm kind of happy that we did that one. Now I'm happy to kind of, and again, around past ADP on Herbert is maybe kind of expected at this point in the offseason with the hype that's been coming as a committee, but there are worse like ways to break a tie too. Guy falling past ADP, we all kind of like him. So I think it's totally fine to give Rob what he fucking wants again, 2 videos in a row.
Oh yeah, that's what it is. This is Trev. Trev pounded the table for Khalil Herbert. So.
Don't pass your pounding
we
the
didn't
table
take
off
Chig.
as
We didn't take
Trev.
Chig. It's your
Yeah.
pick. You're happy.
I mean, to be fair, I was also on AJ Dillon last video, so we'll allow it.
Silas, I backed you up on Kendre. Let's stick together here for a minute.
All right. So are we in agreement on Khalil Herbert here? We're gonna take Khalil Herbert.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. All right, so that's our picks for this round. We went with Khalil Herbert. We went with Tank Bigsby before that. So the team currently is Lamar Jackson, Cam Akers, Damian Harris, A.J. Dillon, Tank Bigsby, Khalil Herbert, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Zay Flowers, and George Kittle. Do think we are setting up for some wide receivers in these next few rounds, most likely, but you never know. There might be a Chigo Kongwe fall to the 13th round, and then we'll have that discussion. But for myself, for Silas, for Eric Beimfor, that is going to do it for us on this edition. We'll probably see you, I'm guessing, in a few days, as these seem to be like a 2-day turnaround, and we'll hit you with rounds 13 and 14 then. Peace. Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.